I'm Eamonn Mallie. Tonight I'm face to face with Gary Lightbody, the lead singer of Snow Patrol. Gary Lightbody, thank you very much for being my guest. I suppose I should say welcome home. Why have you repatriated yourself in Bangor again? Why are you back here?
The band are starting back up again, so I have to be closer to home. Most of the band live in London, and I'd rather be here than London. I'd rather be here than most anywhere. You know, I've really enjoyed being in LA, but I love being at home.
Now, you've returned to Northern Ireland at a time when there's not much optimism. All the goodwill and dreams and hopes which obtained in the wake of the Good Friday Agreement, so much of that has evaporated. Does that concern you, though, settling back here? No,
it doesn't concern me. I think that there is an extraordinary resilience and heart and a good heart in the people of Northern Ireland. There always has been, there always will be. If you look at the March for Marriage Equality, which I was involved, which I marched in, there was 20,000 people at it in Belfast, which, you know, was an extraordinary moment for showing the love, the depth of love for in the people of Northern Ireland. I think there has always been a great wellspring of hope and love for the future in here. I don't think there's anything to be overly concerned about.
Does it pain you, however, that in the 21st century, this particular patch of the world is incapable of introducing legislation for same-sex marriage and equality rights, which everybody takes for granted in other countries throughout the world?
Yeah, well, that does concern me, yes. I mean, there's definitely a massive positive movement that want it in Northern Ireland. The majority of people in Northern Ireland want it. And hopefully people in power will see sense at some point.
Why shouldn't young people, though, leave? Because of the political inertia, the bigotry and the sectarianism. Does that preoccupy you, or is it a good source, potentially, of material for which to write?
I think as a teenager I wrote a lot about it. There's a lot of bad poetry I've written about the troubles in Northern Ireland and the sectarianism and the kind of the negative qualities of Northern Ireland, the hatred. I wrote a lot about it when I was a teenager to try and deal with it, to try and cope with it. And as an adult, I kind of moved away from that. I wanted to write about positive things. I wanted to write about love, essentially, which I still do.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Was there any creative dimension or aspect to your family which ultimately travelled through your genes, do you think?
My mother and my uncle Finlay, who is very dear to me, both sang in the choir. They both had lovely voices, but my mother never used her voice around the house. I wouldn't hear her singing that much, so there wasn't really music in the house. We had a scant collection of vinyl records, most of which were country records, and some of which were like instrumental or orchestral records.
So you're telling me Big Tom and Brendan Shina, those guys would have been figuring in your home when you were coming through?
It was Mo Bandy, Merle Haggard, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers. Artists at the time that it seemed like nails down a blackboard to my young ears, but now I listen to a lot of country music and have a great appreciation for it, but it wasn't what I wanted to listen to as a kid.
What about the Man in Black? Did you like them?
Well, Johnny Cash didn't really come into my life until the Rick Rubin years, where I didn't really know much about him until those albums started coming out, where he did lots of covers of like Nine Inch Nails songs and Will Oldham songs and things like that. And that's what introduced Johnny Cash to me, and I'm sure very many people. And then I went back to the back catalogue, and I mean, he's an extraordinary writer.
You couldn't have escaped an awareness of Van Morrison when you were coming through, I'm sure, as you developed.
No.
How much of an impact would he have had on you, or would he have had any impact on you personally?
Yeah, massive impact.
In what sense?
Just his way with melody, his lyrics, his songwriting craft. I mean, he's one of the greatest songwriters to ever live, and he lives, you know, stone's throw away from the. Not that I would throw stones at your house, Van, but a stone's throw away from my house, you know, now, and it's a great sort of privilege to have one of the world's most revered songwriters come from Northern Ireland, for sure.
I know a lot of people who own horses, and they spend a lot of time coming up with names for horses. They're always ringing me. "Will you have any ideas for a name for a horse?" Names for bands. From where did Snow Patrol come? There are theories about the genesis of the term Snow Patrol. What's the background to it?
Well, we were called Polar Bear to begin with, and we were being sued by, or about to be sued by, a band in America called Polar Bear, which we didn't know about. Back in those days, there was 1997. I don't think the internet was available to people, normal people like ourselves, and we just didn't know about it until American lawyers got in touch with us. And a few days before that, a friend of mine in Scotland, Vince Duran, had met me in the street and said, "Hi Gary, how's your band going? How's Snow Patrol?" And I said, "Vince, we're called Polar Bear. Where'd you get Snow Patrol from?" And he just made it up in his head that that's what we were called. And I told the guys that. 2 days later, we were sued, or threatened to be sued, and we all agreed that it was kind of, you know, it was just, it was the perfect name for us.
You are quoted, I don't know if you were the author of the phrase or the term, Snow Patrol were a 10-year overnight success. Will you talk to us about that?
Yeah, that was somebody else's line that I quote sometimes, but yeah, we started in 1994 in Dundee at university. First day at uni, I met Mark McClelland, who was our original bass player, and we started writing together. And from then until 2004, when Run came out, which was our first hit, we had no success at all. We were playing one show we did in Leeds, Joseph's Well in Leeds, was there was one person at it. So we were not, we were many lean years. You know, we were playing, most of our shows were to 40 people or so.
How bad was that? Well, did you get depressed during those times?
Not until we made the album Final Straw in 2003, which I thought was an extraordinary record. Even myself being very, I'm very hard on myself, I even thought it was a good record. And I was, when that came out to no success at all initially, that's when I got depressed.
And how low did you go? How bleak was it for you at that
Well,
stage?
I mean, I drank a lot back then, and for many years after it, and I would disappear into a bottle for sure, and that's how I dealt with my depression. I didn't really deal with it. I just drank it away.
Did you ever consider self-harming as a result of all that? Did you ever reach that point?
No, I mean, self-harming. You know, I've been suicidal at times in my life, but never like always just a thought. It's not the thought that I would, how am I going to kill myself? More the thought that wouldn't it be better if I wasn't here? You know, that's more the thought.
But isn't that very bleak?
That's very bleak, yeah.
That is dark.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's been something I've struggled with, depression for sure. It's not something that I'm completely past. You know, I have to keep very vigilant about it and do a lot of mental maintenance.
And how did you navigate yourself out of that dark tunnel?
Well, success helped. You know what I mean? It's a very good patch. It patches things up so that you don't really notice just how kind of how lost you are, because after the album was re-released in 2004 because Run was a success, and the album then was a massive success, and that started a path to like the next 10 years of our lives being very successful, and we didn't really have time to we didn't really have time to stop and think about anything.
Do you think, though, that you're more relevant, more competent, a fuller songwriter because success came dropping slow?
Yeah, yeah. If our first record was successful, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I'm not saying that I'd be dead. I'm just saying that it would be over already. It would be a flash in the pan.
You think you would have burned out?
Yeah, for absolutely sure. I was so cocky back then. I was so confident that we were going to take over the world in an instant. And when it didn't come, and it didn't come for a long time, that was all beaten out of me. And it got down to my core. You know, what did I really want to do in my life? And that was right, and make music. And did it matter that if it was successful? No, it doesn't matter if it's successful.
This may seem a rather stupid question. How do you write a song?
I don't quite know how to answer that, only that I sit down with the guitar and I don't really know how to play the guitar very well. I know the basic chords, but most of the time I just move my fingers into shapes. And when I hit upon a shape that I like, I write a melody over the top of it. And it is as simple as that.
And how quickly do the words, the lyrics come once you hit those few bars? How quickly do the words come?
Well, one song in particular that I wrote for this new record took
What do you call it?
5 years.
What do you call the song?
Well, the song, I've already put the song title up on social media, so I can talk about that. But Life on Earth, which is obviously a very specific topic, it took me 5 years to write the lyrics for that song.
Well, that's not unusual in many cases. Artists quite often carry an idea around for 50 years before they're committed to canvas. So I suppose
5 years is my longest.
Yeah,
5 years is my longest by far. Normally it takes me a matter of hours or minutes, but 5 years is a
How
bit of
big a
stretch.
part, Gary, does accident play in music songwriting?
Massive, massive. I always think a song like Chasing Cars that I wrote in a flurry of other songs. I wrote 10 songs that night. Excuse me. I wrote 10 songs the night that I wrote Chasing Cars. It happened in a flurry of red wine. Myself and Garrett, Jack Knife Lee, our producer, were sitting in his studio, and he was recording, and I was just writing ideas. And Chasing Cars came right in the middle of it all in a flow. So I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't planned. It wasn't let's sit down and write the song that'll define us. It was just, it happened in a flash.
To what do you put down the appeal of Chasing Cars for so many people? Some 170 million people went to YouTube to hear this. What was it about this song that was so different?
What was it about that was so different? I'm not sure. I think at the time it might have, and I guess it still does, that it's simplicity, I think. That it doesn't pretend to be something that it isn't. It's just a song about love, and it's a song about being with someone that you love. It's so simple, and it's kind of disarming in that way. And it doesn't have, there's no subtext. It says what it means.
Why? Why is this so hard, or so difficult not to write another 10 Chasing Cars? What's the problem?
I think the problem is that if you try and copy it, it is a copy. It's not ever going to be the same. It's going to be an imitation of something that was great. And I think that music has kind of moved on since then. At the time, those big anthemic songs were kind of not that they'd never existed before, but the way that we were doing them was, it seemed fresher, whereas now that's kind of run its course. It's moved on to something else. Music sounds different now. If we did another song that sounded like that, it would sound out of place and something kind of out of time about it.
Ralph McLean, the distinguished radio presenter, he suggested to me that your music could be bracketed in terms of intimate and anthemic. Now, are you leaving that behind, or where are you going with your new album? What's the new dimension that you're bringing to music today?
In terms of lyrics, I've went deeper than I've ever gone before. Stopped drinking 18 months ago, and I was able to access parts of my brain that were long pickled, and I was able to kind of go into places that were kind of terrifying to go into before, where talking about alcoholism, drug addiction. My father has dementia. I talk about that on the record. It sounds like the record is extremely serious and depressing. It's not. It's a very joyful, hopeful record as well. But those topics are not shied away from. Where I have just spoken about love in the past, this record is so much more expansive.
Can you expand a little more on that? Because people will be very interested in that.
With whatever clarity I have now, it's been, it kind of comes with plus points and negative points. The plus points are that I'm able to write about things that I've never been able to write about before, and the negative points are that you got to deal with all the things that over the years you've that have maybe frightened me.
You're a lead singer of the band. Personnel have changed. You're still there. What defines a lead singer? Why were you the chosen one as such, the lead singer?
I think what defines a lead singer is someone with a lot of ego. My ego is something I've wrestled with. I've always been. That's another thing I worry about.
That's a big thing about which to worry. That's not a small thing.
Being an asshole, you know what I mean? But I've always tempered that with being self-depreciating. So I think trying to get the balance between having enough ego to get on stage and perform and give the songs the platform that they deserve, and not getting carried away and being a diva or being an asshole to people. And I don't think I am an asshole to people, but I do have an awful lot of ego, and I think lead singers need it.
Is it songwriting, researching, or performing which gives you the biggest buzz? Performing.
I think it does feed that ego, feed that confidence, feed that sort of thing that you need as a performer, as an artist, to kind of. I mean, there's no point in sitting in your, hiding from it. I want to embrace it.
Of all the writers, songwriters, musicians, singers, composers, all of those, which of them, or who among them, has really, really left that indelible mark upon you?
Indelible mark? Jeff Buckley, I think, is the first one that comes to mind. I think Jeff Buckley was, he released his first album, Grace, in 1994, which was the year Snow Patrol was, the year we got together. And that album had a massive impact on me, and it's one of the most extraordinary records still, I think. And he's very, very missed. I think that I would love to hear the music that he would be making now. Obviously he died in '97, and only made 2 albums, but they had a massive impact on my life.
Now, you have a very good reputation for taking an interest in and promoting and doing your best to help young people here who are interested in music. Now, your friend Davy Matchett said of you, Gary's involvement in the development of a number of local artists and his support for music business generally in Northern Ireland has been unflinching and unrivaled. Giving back is one of your traits of which people speak a lot. Why is this so passionate? What distinguishes you in this field? Because very few seem to give back. Well,
I didn't know that I had that reputation. It's lovely that people might say that about me, but I think that because of the first 10 years of our career, not having any hits, not having any success, selling very few records, playing to very few people, that went on for a decade, and I want to try and help bands, young bands, to not have to go through as long as we went through to have some success, you know what I mean? So with Third Bar, artist development, which I run with Davey Matchett, my friend. He runs it day to day, really, and we try and help young artists in Northern Ireland kind of skip over some of the pitfalls that we fell into. Every possible trap that you could fall into, we fell into, and so we know all these things, all these terrible traps you can fall into. So it's good to try and help them navigate.
In the art world, people keep asking me, Eamonn, the next talent. Who's the next talent? Who's the next great artist? Have you spotted any emerging talent of major significance?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a band from Derry called Touts who are fantastic, a punk band. And there's a girl who calls herself Jealous of the Birds, who is really wonderful, writes amazing songs, written a really great album as well. And there's so many. There's so many. I think Northern Irish talent at the moment is and has been for years, there's really something bubbling, which is really, really encouraging, fantastic.
I want to ask you something. You've met a lot of people, you've read about a lot of people, you're literary, you're interested in poets and writers and all that type of thing. Of all of those, who among them, or whom among them, would you like to have as your dinner guest, over and above the rest?
Stephen Fry, Jody Mitchell, Carl Frampton. I'll go another Northern Irish man, Liam Neeson, and Shirley Bassey. My mum and I share a great love of Shirley Bassey's voice, and I met her one time, and she said, I would like you to write me a song. I'd like you to write me a song like your song Crashing Cars. And she said it in her wonderful Welsh accent, which I'm not going to try and copy. And it just, it made me so happy.
Crashing Cars.
Crashing Cars.
Gary Lightbody, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you.